Hello, and welcome. Today, we are going to talk about one of the most fascinating countries in Europe, France. France is a country with a very long history, full of great kings, revolutions, wars, artists, and ideas. It has shaped the world in many ways, through its language, its culture, its food, and its politics. Let us start from the very beginning. The land we now call France has been home to people for a very long time, more than 40,000 years. The ancient people who lived there left paintings on cave walls. The most famous of these caves is called Lascaux, in the south of France. These paintings show animals like horses, deer, and bison, and they are truly beautiful. About 2,500 years ago, the area was home to a group of people called the Gauls. The Gauls were Celtic people, brave warriors who lived in tribes and had their own religions and traditions. They were not one united nation, but many separate groups living across the land. Then, in 58 BC, a Roman general arrived. His name was Julius Caesar. Caesar spent 8 years fighting the Gauls in a series of wars called the Gallic Wars. The Gauls had a great leader named Vercingetorix, who united many tribes to fight back. But in 52 BC, Caesar defeated Vercingetorix at the Battle of Alesia. Gaul became part of the Roman Empire. Over time, the Gauls adopted the Latin language, Roman laws, and Roman culture. This mixing of Gaul and Rome would become the foundation of French civilization. When the Roman Empire began to collapse in the 400s AD, new groups of people moved into Gaul. One of the most important was a Germanic tribe called the Franks. The Franks were strong warriors, and they gradually took control of most of the region. The most important early Frankish king was Clovis, who ruled at the end of the 400s. Clovis united the Frankish tribes and converted to Christianity. This was a very important moment. It connected the Frankish kingdom to the Catholic Church in Rome and gave it great religious and political power. Later, another king made France even more powerful. His name was Charlemagne, which means Charles the Great. Charlemagne ruled from 768 to 814 AD. He built an enormous empire that covered most of Western Europe, including modern France, Germany, and northern Italy. On Christmas Day in the year 800, the Pope, the leader of the Catholic Church, crowned Charlemagne as Emperor of the Romans. It was one of the most important moments in European history. After Charlemagne died, his empire was divided among his grandsons. The western part became the Kingdom of France. This is why historians often say that France, as a country, was born from the division of Charlemagne's empire. The name France itself comes from the Franks. Through the Middle Ages, from about 900 to 1400 AD, France was a kingdom ruled by kings. But the king did not have complete control. Powerful nobles, lords who owned large areas of land, also had great power. This system, where land and power were exchanged for loyalty and military service, is called feudalism. In 1066, something very important happened. William, the Duke of Normandy, a region in northern France, crossed the English Channel and conquered England. This is called the Norman Conquest. William became King of England, but he was also a French noble. This created a deep connection between France and England that would last for centuries and cause many wars. One of the most famous conflicts between France and England is called the 100 Years' War. It lasted from 1337 to 1453, over 100 years. England and France fought over who had the right to rule France. During this long war, a remarkable young woman appeared. Her name was Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc was a teenage girl from a small village in eastern France. She said that she heard the voices of saints telling her to help the French king defeat the English. Despite being very young and having no military training, she led French soldiers into battle and won several important victories. She gave the French army new confidence and energy. Unfortunately, she was captured by her enemies, sold to the English, and burned to death in 1431. She was only 19 years old. Today, Joan of Arc is the national hero of France, a symbol of courage, faith, and patriotism. France eventually won the 100 Years' War. England lost almost all of its land in France. The French king became stronger, and France slowly became a more united country. In the 1400s and 1500s, a great cultural movement called the Renaissance spread from Italy across Europe. Renaissance means rebirth in French. It was a time of great art, science, literature, and new ideas. In France, kings like Francis I loved art and culture. He invited the famous Italian artist Leonardo da Vinci to come and live in France. Leonardo spent the last years of his life there and brought the Mona Lisa with him. That is why the Mona Lisa is today kept in the Louvre Museum in Paris. But this was also a time of great religious conflict. In the 1500s, a religious movement called the Protestant Reformation spread across Europe. Some people in France became Protestants, called Huguenots. The Catholic Church and the French king did not like this. Tensions grew between Catholics and Protestants. In 1572, the situation exploded into terrible violence. On the night of August 23rd, called the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre, thousands of Protestant Huguenots were killed across France. It was one of the darkest events in French history. The religious wars continued for decades. Finally, in 1598, King Henry IV signed the Edict of Nantes, which gave Protestants the right to practice their religion in peace. It was an important step toward religious tolerance. Henry IV is still remembered as one of the best French kings, wise, generous, and loved by the people. In the 1600s, France became the most powerful country in Europe. This was the age of the absolute monarch, a king who had total power over the country, with no limits. The most famous of these kings was Louis XIV, who ruled France for an extraordinary 72 years, from 1643 to 1715. Louis XIV called himself the Sun King. Just as the sun is the center of the solar system, he believed that he was the center of France and of Europe. He famously said, or is said to have said, "L'état, c'est moi," which means, "I am the state." Everything in France revolved around him. Louis XIV built one of the most magnificent buildings in the world, the Palace of Versailles, just outside Paris. It had over 700 rooms, beautiful gardens, and golden decorations. The king forced all the most important nobles to live at Versailles, so he could watch them and control them. Versailles became a symbol of French power and luxury that impressed the whole world. Under Louis XIV, France fought many wars and expanded its borders. French culture, language, art, fashion, and cuisine spread across Europe. French became the language of diplomacy and culture, spoken by educated people across the continent. But all this power and luxury came at a great cost. The French people paid very high taxes. The poor suffered. And the seeds of a great revolution were slowly growing. By the late 1700s, France was in serious trouble. The government had very little money. The poor paid heavy taxes while the rich paid almost nothing. People were hungry. New ideas about freedom and equality, from thinkers like Voltaire and Rousseau, were spreading fast. Then the American Revolution of 1776 showed that ordinary people could overthrow a government and build a new one based on freedom. In 1789, France exploded. The revolution began. On July 14, 1789, a crowd of angry Parisians stormed and destroyed the Bastille, a famous prison that was a symbol of royal power. This date, July 14th, is now France's national holiday, called Bastille Day. The revolution changed everything. The king, Louis XVI, lost his power. A new government was formed. The famous slogan of the revolution was Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, liberty, equality, brotherhood. In 1793, King Louis XVI was put on trial and executed by guillotine. His wife, the famous Queen Marie Antoinette, was executed shortly after. The revolution became more and more violent. A period called the Reign of Terror began, during which thousands of people were executed, including many who had supported the revolution. It was a chaotic and frightening time. Eventually, a new, more stable government was formed. But France was exhausted, divided, and ready for a strong leader. That leader was waiting. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica, which had just become part of France. He was a brilliant military general who rose quickly through the ranks during the revolution. By 1799, he took control of the French government in a coup, a sudden takeover of power. And in 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of France in a grand ceremony at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Napoleon was one of the greatest military commanders in history. He won battle after battle and built a French empire that covered most of Europe. He changed France deeply. He created a new legal system called the Napoleonic Code, which organized French law clearly and fairly. Many countries around the world still use ideas from the Napoleonic Code today. But Napoleon was also very ambitious, and his ambition eventually destroyed him. In 1812, he made a catastrophic decision. He invaded Russia with an army of over 600,000 men. The Russian winter was brutal. The French army had no food, no shelter, and no way to fight the cold. Only about 100,000 soldiers survived the retreat. It was a disaster. After Russia, Napoleon's enemies united against him. In 1814, he was defeated and sent into exile on the island of Elba. He escaped briefly and returned to power for 100 days, but was defeated again at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. This time, he was sent to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean, where he died in 1821. Napoleon remains one of the most fascinating and controversial figures in history, both a hero and a conqueror. After Napoleon, France went through a turbulent 19th century. There were more revolutions. In 1830 and 1848, there were more kings and emperors. Napoleon's nephew, Louis Napoleon, became Emperor Napoleon III in 1852. Under him, Paris was rebuilt into the beautiful, wide boulevard city it is today, with the help of a man named Baron Haussmann. In 1870, France fought a short but disastrous war against Prussia, a powerful German state. France lost quickly and had to give up a region called Alsace-Lorraine. It was a humiliating defeat that the French did not forget. After this war, France became a republic again, the Third Republic. It was a time of great cultural creativity. Artists like Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and Edgar Degas created the Impressionist movement, a new style of painting that changed art forever. Writers like Victor Hugo and Émile Zola wrote powerful novels. The Lumière brothers invented cinema in Lyon in 1895. And in 1889, for the World's Fair in Paris, a magnificent iron tower was built. Many Parisians hated it at first and called it ugly. But the Eiffel Tower, named after its engineer, Gustave Eiffel, became the most visited monument in the world. Today it is the symbol of France itself. In 1914, World War I began. France was at the center of the fighting. German armies invaded from the east. The front line, the place where armies faced each other, ran right through northeastern France. For 4 years, soldiers on both sides lived and died in muddy trenches. Millions of French soldiers were killed or wounded. Entire regions of France were destroyed. When the war finally ended in 1918, France had won, but the cost was devastating. Just 20 years later, in 1939, World War II began. In May 1940, Germany launched a massive surprise attack through Belgium and into France. In just 6 weeks, France was defeated. German soldiers marched into Paris. It was a shocking and humiliating moment. France was divided. In the south, a new French government was formed that cooperated with the Germans. It was called the Vichy regime. But many French people refused to accept defeat. A general named Charles de Gaulle escaped to London and continued to fight. He gave a famous radio speech telling the French people not to give up. The movement he led was called the French Resistance. After D-Day in June 1944, when American and Allied forces landed in Normandy, France was slowly liberated from German control. Paris was freed in August 1944. Charles de Gaulle walked through the streets of Paris in triumph. France was free again, but it had suffered enormously, and the memory of collaboration, working with the enemy, remained a painful and complicated part of French history. After the war, France rebuilt quickly. With the help of American money through the Marshall Plan, the French economy recovered. France became a founding member of what would eventually become the European Union, a group of European countries that worked together politically and economically. France and Germany, old enemies, became the closest of partners. It was a remarkable transformation. Charles de Gaulle became the first president of the Fifth Republic, France's current system of government, in 1958. He gave France strong, stable leadership and restored its international reputation. France developed its own nuclear weapons and pursued an independent foreign policy. De Gaulle wanted France to be a great power again, not just a follower of America or Britain. In May 1968, something unusual happened. Students in Paris began protesting against the government, the university system, and traditional society. The protests spread, workers went on strike, and the whole country was nearly paralyzed. It was a cultural revolution, a moment when young people challenged old ideas about authority, work, and freedom. The events of May 1968 changed French society deeply and are still talked about today. Through the following decades, France remained one of the world's leading nations, a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, a nuclear power, and a cultural giant. French cinema, literature, philosophy, fashion, and cuisine continued to influence the whole world. So what has France given to the world? The answer is a great deal. First, language. French was the international language of diplomacy and culture for hundreds of years. Today, about 300 million people speak French around the world, in countries across Europe, Africa, Canada, and the Caribbean. The French language is still one of the official languages of the United Nations, the European Union, and many international organizations. Second, ideas. The French Enlightenment, a movement of thinkers in the 1700s, gave the world ideas about freedom, reason, human rights, and democracy. Thinkers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu influenced the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and constitutions around the world. The phrase liberty, equality, brotherhood is one of the most powerful political ideas in history. Third, art and culture. France has produced some of the world's greatest artists, writers, musicians, and filmmakers. The Louvre in Paris is the most visited art museum in the world. French cinema, from early silent films to modern classics, has shaped how films are made everywhere. French literature, from Victor Hugo to Marcel Proust to Albert Camus, is read and studied across the globe. Fourth, food and fashion. French cuisine is considered by many to be the finest in the world. French cooking techniques, ingredients, and traditions are the foundation of professional cooking everywhere. And Paris remains the global capital of fashion, home to legendary brands and designers who define style for the entire planet. We started with cave paintings in Lascaux and Celtic warriors called the Gauls. Then came Roman conquest, Frankish kings, medieval wars, absolute monarchs, a great revolution, Napoleon, two devastating world wars, and finally a modern democratic republic at the heart of Europe. France is a country that has experienced great triumphs and terrible tragedies. It has produced extraordinary beauty in art, food, architecture, and ideas. And it has also made serious mistakes. But through all of it, France has remained a country with a powerful sense of its own identity and mission in the world. The French have a phrase, La Grande Nation, the great nation. Whether you agree with that description or not, it is impossible to deny that France has been one of the most influential countries in human history. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope this helped you learn something new about history, about France, and about English. See you in the next lesson. Goodbye.